I shouldn't have taken it out on you. I'm sorry. You study him for a moment, weighing his words against your anger. Part of you wants to lash out more, to keep him on edge, but another part recognizes the genuine remorse in his voice. Slowly you nod. All right, man, I guess we're good, but don't fucking test me, you hear? Étienne nods, relief evident on his face. I hear you, Chris. Let's just get through this, okay? With that, you follow him out of the hideout, back into the unforgiving streets of New Iberia. The sense of purpose and determination you feel is almost enough to push aside the lingering anger and resentment. Almost. As you walk, you can't help but wonder if Mariette's offer is too good to be true, and what exactly you'll ask for when the time comes. Mariette's offer hangs in the air between the two of you, a tempting carrot dangled in front of your noses. As you and Étienne head back out into the streets of New Iberia, the promise of freedom and reward dancing through your thoughts, you can't help but feel a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. Étienne seems to be lost in his own thoughts, his expression solemn as he weighs the potential consequences of their mission. I can't believe we're finally this close, he mutters under his breath. It's been so long since I've seen her. You nod in understanding, but a small voice in the back of your mind can't help but wonder how much you'll really want to see her once you've found out about her project. The thought is quickly chased away by more immediate concerns. So where to now, Chief, you ask, needing to keep your mind focused on the task at hand. Étienne looks around, considering his options, before leading you to a small, run-down diner. The smell of greasy burgers and stale beer assault your senses as you step inside. But it's just the kind of place where you and your buddies used to go back before the world ended. The memory brings a pang of nostalgia, tinged with sadness and regret. The two of you take a seat at the counter, and Étienne immediately begins to scan the menu, as if trying to distance himself from the weight of their situation. You, on the other hand, can't resist the allure of the waitress, a curvy brunette with a suggestive wink and an even more suggestive sway to her hips. As she approaches your side of the counter, you can't help but wonder what kind of trouble you can get into with her tonight. What can I get you, boys? She purrs, running a manicured finger along the countertop. Étienne snaps his gaze up from the menu, a blush creeping onto his cheeks. I'll have the burger, with fries, and Coke, I guess. You say, and I have a 17-inch dick, ma'am, just so you know. The waitress's eyes widen slightly, but she manages to maintain her professional demeanor as she glances at you. Oh, and what would you like, handsome? She smiles warmly, and you find yourself feeling a surge of confidence. You say, what's the house special? The waitress smirks. Well, I can tell you right now that it's not on the menu. She leans in conspiratorially. But for someone like you, I might be able to make an exception. Her voice drops to a whisper, and you find yourself leaning in closer to hear her. Let me see if I can get it from the back just for you. Shouldn't be a problem, with the way you're looking at me. She winks, then disappears into the back of the diner, leaving the two of you alone at the counter. Étienne glances nervously between you and the space where the waitress had been, clearly unsure whether or not he should be jealous. You, on the other hand, are feeling more confident and adventurous than ever. This could be just the sort of distraction you need to take your mind off things for a while. You say, what? It's what the good Lord gave me, I might as well use it. Étienne nods, unable to help but smile a little, and you can't help but feel a surge of affection for your buddy. Sometimes, it's nice to have someone you can rely on, even in the darkest of times. The waitress returns a few minutes later, a mischievous grin on her face. I took the liberty of preparing the house special just for you, she says, setting a steaming plate in front of you. I hope you enjoy it. The aroma that wafts up from the plate is almost overwhelming, a mixture of spices and heat that makes your mouth water. You can't resist taking a bite, and as soon as the flavors explode on your tongue, you know that it's like nothing you've ever tasted before. It's incredible. Thanks, this is amazing, you say through a full mouth, barely able to contain your excitement. I can't wait to see what else you have to offer. You wink at her, and she blushes again, her smile growing brighter. Étienne watches all of this with a mixture of amusement and embarrassment, but you can tell he's also a little jealous. You pat him on the shoulder reassuringly. Don't worry, my friend. There's plenty of good food and company to go around. The two of you continue to chat with the waitress, letting the night unfold before you, enjoying the brief respite from the weight of your mission. It's not long before you find yourself completely engrossed in the conversation, forgetting all about your original purpose for coming to New Iberia. And as the alcohol starts to flow and the food continues to hit the spot, you begin to wonder if perhaps this little detour wasn't such a bad idea after all. You say, fuck y'all, I'm just gonna say it, this is a good fucking time. A fucking absolute great time that I will store in my drunken memory banks for the rest of my goddamned life, let me tell you what. Étienne laughs and nods in agreement, raising his mug in a toast. To great times and lasting memories, he says, downing the remainder of his drink. The waitress refills both of your mugs, and she looks genuinely pleased to have such appreciative customers. As the night wears on, the three of you continue to chat and laugh, occasionally leaning in closer to share secrets or stories. The waitress's face grows flushed from the alcohol, and she seems to lose some of her inhibitions. So, she says, her voice lowering conspiratorially, what are you boys up to in this neck of the woods? You're not here just for the food, are you? You glance at Étienne, who gives you a meaningful look. It's time to decide whether or not to trust this woman. You say, no, we're here for the food, the booze, and the women. Or maybe more accurately at this very time being you. The waitress lets out a hearty laugh, her deep brown eyes sparkling with mirth. Well, that's not a bad answer, and you certainly know how to say the right things to a girl. So, you want to know about me? She takes another sip of her drink, then leans in closer, conspiratorially. I'm part of the resistance, just like Étienne's sister. We've been fighting against the Lamont Confederation for as long as I can remember. Étienne nods, a serious expression on his face. We're here to meet with some important people, he says quietly. We need all the help we can get. You look at Étienne, considering his words. You're not sure if you trust this woman just yet, but she seems to know what she's talking about, and if she's really part of the resistance, well, you could use all the allies you can get. All right, you say finally. We could use all the help we can get. You in or out? The waitress looks at you, surprised by your bluntness. Then, a wicked grin spreads across her face. In. You can count on me. With that, she glances over her shoulder to make sure no one's listening, then leans in even closer. There's a secret meeting at the edge of town tonight, she whispers. Some important figures from the resistance are supposed to be there. If you hurry, you might be able to catch them before they leave. Étienne exchanges a look with you. This sounds too good to be true, but then again, desperate times call for desperate measures. Are you sure you can get us in? He asks, his voice barely above a whisper. We don't want to put you in any danger. The waitress laughs. Don't worry about that, my cover's already been checked. They'll let me in, and I'll let you two tag along. She glances over her shoulder again, then takes out a small folded piece of paper from her pocket. Here, this is the password you'll need to get past the guards. You say, all right, look lady, I was having a good time. Probably was going to drink a bit more and then fuck your brains out. But if you is trying to talk business and enter what we're doing, then let me tell you one thing. If you fuck us over, I'll kill you. You and everybody that's with you. You all die, no exceptions. But if you're being serious and an ally, then I guess we can have a few more drinks at the end of it, and you can have the night of your life. With my penis. Don't forget, it's 17 inches. The waitress stares at you intently for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, a faint smile curls at the corner of her lips. I appreciate your honesty, she says, and I understand the risks involved. So I'll give you my word I won't lead you astray. Étienne nods slowly, considering her words. All right, he finally says, let's do it. He takes the piece of paper from her and unfolds it, revealing the password. When do we leave? As soon as you're ready, the waitress replies. Just finish your drinks and I'll slip out back to meet you. With that, she turns on her heel and hurries off, disappearing into the crowd. You glance at Étienne, raising an eyebrow. I'll fuck her brains out as promised, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little nervous about all this. You sure you want to go through with it? Étienne looks at you seriously, his expression grim. What choice do we have, Chris? We have to try. For my sister and for everyone else caught in this nightmare. If there's even a chance we can make a difference, we have to take it. There's a determination in his voice that you can't help but admire. Despite the risks, it seems that he's as committed to this as you are. So, with a nod, you finish your drink and stand up. All right then, let's go find this secret meeting and see what we can dig up. The two of you hurry out of the diner, following the waitress through the back alleys and down a hidden path that leads to the edge of town. As you approach a dilapidated barn, you hear the sounds of muffled voices within. The waitress nods toward a gap in the boarded-up wall, then disappears silently into the darkness. Chris glances at Étienne, then peeks through the gap in the wall. He can see a dimly lit room inside, filled with shadowy figures huddled around a makeshift table. He nods to Étienne, gesturing for him to take a look as well. They both step through the opening, slipping into the midst of the resistance. Chris nods at the shadowy figures in the room, watching carefully as they speak in hushed tones. He recognizes Mariette, the resistance leader, as well as a few others from their initial meeting. They seem to be deep in conversation, and it's clear that they are worried about something. Étienne looks at him questioningly, and Chris shrugs. I don't know, they seem on edge. Maybe they just found out something we don't know yet, or maybe they're just paranoid. He looks around the room, sizing up the other resistance members. But we're here now. Let's try and blend in and see what we can learn. As you listen in, you hear Mariette mention something about a new threat from the Lamont Confederation, something called the somnambulant gas. The other resistance members nod gravely, expressing their concern and fear. It's clear that they're worried about what the Confederation might do with this new weapon. Before you can ask any questions, the meeting comes to an abrupt end. The resistance members exchange hurried whispers and then begin to file out of the room. Mariette lingers behind for a moment, spotting the two of you. Welcome to the resistance, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. I trust you're both committed to our cause? Étienne nods emphatically, his eyes burning with determination. I am, ma'am, for my sister and for all of us. Chris clears his throat uncomfortably, still unsure how much he really wants to be here. But then he thinks about the promises that were made and the potential reward. He squares his shoulders and meets Mariette's gaze. I'm in it for the end game, he says curtly. But I'm here. Let's just hope we can make a difference. Mariette narrows her eyes slightly, but seems to take your words at face value. Very well then, she says, inclining her head in acknowledgement. I will tell you what I can about the somnambulant gas. We believe it to be a highly potent and rapidly acting hallucinogenic compound, designed to disorient and confuse its victims. The Confederation has been using it to great effect, sowing chaos and discord among our ranks. She takes a deep breath, her expression grim. We have reason to believe that they are planning a large-scale deployment of the gas in the coming days, perhaps as a prelude to a major offensive. It is vital that we find out where and when this will happen, and do whatever we can to stop them. Étienne nods solemnly, his eyes fixed on Mariette. What do you need us to do, ma'am? He asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Mariette glances at you out of the corner of her eye, studying your expression. She seems to be considering whether or not you're truly committed to their cause. After a moment, she takes a step closer to the two of you. There is a potential source of information, she begins, lowering her voice even further. One of their informants, someone who has access to their plans and strategies. We believe that if we could get our hands on them, we could learn everything we need to know about the somnambulant gas and how to stop it. She pauses, looking back and forth between the two of you. We need you to find this informant and bring them back to us alive. With what you know about the Confederation and their tactics, we believe that you are the best suited for this mission. There is a long silence as the weight of her words settle between the three of you. The room seems to grow uncomfortably quiet, the air thick with anticipation and dread. Chris looks at Mariette, then over at Étienne. He takes a deep breath before answering, Yeah, I fucking guess. Let's fucking do it and get this bullshit over with, huh? Étienne glances at Chris, then back at Mariette. Yes, ma'am. We'll find this informant and bring them to you. He looks determined, his eyes burning with purpose. Chris nods in agreement, feeling a surge of adrenaline course through his veins. They've made their choice, and now there's no going back. The three of them spend the next few hours strategizing and planning their mission. Mariette provides them with maps, schematics, and any other information she can find on the target area where the informant is being held. She also arms them with weapons, ammunition, and other supplies they might need. As they work, they grow closer, forming a bond of trust and camaraderie forged in the fires of their shared struggle against oppression. Finally, after everything is prepared, Mariette leads them to the edge of town, pointing out the direction they need to go. She embraced them both, whispering words of encouragement and hope in each of their ears. "Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Étienne. I know this is a dangerous mission, but I believe in you. Go now, and may the spirits of our fallen brethren guide your steps." They watch as Mariette disappears into the darkness, then turn and head off into the night, leaving the relative safety of New Iberia behind them. The air is thick with the scent of the swamp, and the sounds of insects and nighttime creatures surround them on all sides. The tension is palpable, but they both know that they must remain focused and alert if they are to succeed in their mission. As they trudge through the muck and mud, they try to get a feel for the area. It's clear that they're deep in Confederation territory now, and every shadow holds the potential for danger. Chris pulls out a map Mariette gave him and studies it carefully, trying to determine the best route to their destination. "Looks like we need to cut through this section of swamp," he says, pointing to a route that takes them closer to a particularly dense stand of cypress trees. "It'll be more difficult, but it should be less likely that we'll run into any Confederation patrols." The two men exchange glances before nodding in agreement. They steel themselves for the upcoming trek through the treacherous swamp, checking their weapons one last time before setting off. The going is slow and exhausting, but they press on, relying on each other for support and encouragement. As they wade through the fetid water, the occasional splash of an alligator or the warning hiss of a snake keep them on their toes. After what feels like hours of struggling through the dense foliage, they finally spy a faint light glowing in the distance. They pause, listening intently for any signs of movement or danger, but hear nothing save the muffled sounds of the swamp itself. Chris gestures for them to follow him, creeping silently towards the source of the light. As they get closer, they realize that it's coming from a small clearing near the edge of the swamp, where a dilapidated diner sits dark and abandoned. Étienne looks at Chris, then back at the diner. "You think maybe we should find someone in there to help us?" he whispers. Chris shrugs, considering the idea for a moment. "It's a long shot, but what other choice do we have? We could try knocking on the door, see if anyone's still around." They approach the diner cautiously, Chris leading the way. As they near the entrance, they spot a flickering cigarette butt on the ground and the scent of smoke drifting from inside. Chris slowly pushes the door open, revealing a dimly lit interior. The room is empty save for a few abandoned booths and tables, a cracked jukebox, and a counter covered in a thin layer of dust. There's no sign of any patrons or employees. Étienne peeks around Chris's shoulder, looking around nervously. It's like everyone just disappeared." Chris nods in agreement, his brow furrowed in confusion. Suddenly, a faint creak echoes through the room, drawing their attention to the back door. There's someone there, someone moving stealthily towards them. As the figure draws closer, Chris levels his weapon, taking aim at their chest. "Stop or die," he growls, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. The figure freezes in their tracks, slowly raising their hands above their head. It's a young woman, her face twisted in fear. "Who are you and what do you want?" She manages to choke out, her voice trembling. Étienne glances at Chris, then back at the woman. "We're looking for someone," he says, his voice edged with warning. "Someone who knows about the Lamac Confederation and what they've been doing here. Do you know anything about that?" The woman nods slowly, her eyes darting between the two men. I heard they were planning something big, something real bad," she whispers, "but I don't know what or where they are. They just come through here, using the diner as a meeting place sometimes." She pauses, searching their faces for some sign of understanding or compassion. Chris and Étienne exchange a look. "Well," Chris says eventually, "if you can help us find them, maybe you can come with us, help us stop whatever they're planning." The woman's eyes widen in surprise, relief flooding her features. The woman hesitates for a moment, then nods slowly. I can take you to them, she says, her voice resolute. But you have to promise me something first. Chris and Étienne exchange another look, this one more guarded. What's that? Chris asks warily. The woman swallows hard, her expression pained. Promise me that if you can save my sister or my friend or anyone else who's been caught up in this, you'll try. You'll do whatever it takes. There's a pleading note in her voice that's hard to ignore. Étienne glances at Chris, then back at the woman. We'll do our best, he says finally, putting a hand on her shoulder. That's all anyone can ask. The woman nods, her features relaxing slightly. Follow me then, she whispers, leading them through the diner and out the back door. The three of them slip into the darkness, making their way deeper into the swamp and closer to the heart of the danger. You say, by the way, lady, if you fuck me over, I'll kill you where you stand. As the three of you make your way through the swamp, the woman leading you glances back at you worriedly. What do you mean by that? You say, what do you think I mean, woman? We just met you and have no reason to trust you, and now we're following you to a group of armed combatants. So I will reiterate, if you fuck me over, I will kill you. If you do right by me, though, I'll show you my 17-inch penis. Ah, I see. Well, all I can say is that I want to help end this as much as you do. And as for your penis, I appreciate the information, the woman responds nervously, casting a sideways glance at your crotch. I'm Amelie, by the way, just trying to survive in this hellhole. You say, man, I feel that, sister, so go ahead and lead the way. Étienne glances at you, surprised by your candidness, before looking back at Amelie. It's good to know you, Amelie. Lead the way, and we'll do our best to get through this together. He reaches over, patting her on the shoulder reassuringly before falling back a step to give her some space. Amelie nods, her expression grateful. Follow me, she whispers, then turns and wades deeper into the swamp. You and Étienne follow, watching her back as you go. The air thickens, and the vegetation grows more dense as you near the meeting place. Suddenly, Amelie comes to a halt, her head cocked to the side as if listening for something. She gestures for you to crouch low beside her. The meeting's just ahead, she whispers, but be careful. They're armed, and they won't hesitate to shoot you on sight. She pauses, taking a deep breath before continuing. I'll try to stall them, but you need to move fast. You know what to do? You and Étienne exchange another glance. Yeah, you murmur. We got this. As Amelie approaches the group, her voice loud and defiant, you and Étienne split up, moving silently through the trees. You position yourself on the edge of a clearing, your rifle pointed toward the center of the gathering. When she gives the signal, you both open fire. Étienne's marksmanship is impressive, but yours is nothing short of deadly. Bullets slam into the Confederates like a hailstorm, dropping them left and right. The remaining rebels scatter, trying to find cover in the dense foliage. You take aim and carefully pick them off one by one, your shots eerily silent despite the echoes of gunfire around you. After several tense moments, you're certain the area is clear. Étienne finally lowers his weapon, breathing hard. Well done, he gasps. Let's see if Amelie made it out all right. You and Étienne carefully move towards the clearing where Amelie distracted the Lamotte Confederates. She is nowhere to be found, and the bodies of the rebels lay motionless around you. Étienne's expression darkens. We need to find Amelie, he says decisively. She risked her life for us, and we can't just leave her behind. You say to fuck we can't? First off, for all we know, she could have been on their side and made the best of a bad situation and scooted up out of here when she seen us with the upper hand. Second, we have a fucking mission, so let's gather up any weapons, ammo, supplies, and critical info we can and move on. She ain't our priority, bub. Étienne turns to look at you with a mixture of shock and hurt in his eyes. You can't be serious. Amelie risked her life for us and you're willing to just abandon her? Look, I'm not saying she don't deserve some help, you say, trying to backpedal. But we got a job to do, and if she was so goddamn important, why didn't she stick around? We can go look for her after we finish this mission. Étienne shakes his head in disbelief. You're willing to let her die just because she wasn't here when you wanted her to be? That's cold, Chris. With that, he turns and begins searching the bodies of the fallen rebels for any useful supplies. You say, motherfucker, don't you judge me when all you've been telling me this whole time is I'm the only one who can pull this off. If you don't like the way I handle a mission, then go find some other fuck who put up with all this bullshit. Otherwise, just shut the fuck up and let me get the fucking job done as I know best. Étienne whirls around at your outburst, anger flashing in his eyes. You're right, he says, struggling to keep his voice steady. I shouldn't judge you, but I can't let you just abandon Amelie. She's family, Chris, and if we abandon her now, we're no better than the Lamac Confederates. He takes a deep breath, trying to compose himself. Look, we're wasting time arguing. Let's just search the bodies and find whatever we can. We can discuss this more once we're out of here. With that, he returns to the task at hand, efficiently scouring the bodies for supplies. You and Étienne search the bodies efficiently, collecting weapons, ammunition, supplies, and whatever other useful items you can find. As you rummage through a dead Lamac Confederate's pockets, you find a few loose papers with details about the Confederation's somnambulant gas program. Intrigued, you hand it over to Étienne. Étienne, take a look at this, you say, holding up the papers. This might be important. He takes the documents from you and quickly scans through them, a grim expression on his face. This is information we need to get to the resistance immediately, he says urgently. It details the effects of their somnambulant gas, as well as their plans for distribution. If the resistance can use this against them, we might have a real chance of taking them down for good. You say, well, then let's fucking do it, bub. Étienne nods in agreement. Right, we need to get to the nearest resistance safe house and pass this information on. They can use it to counter the Confederation's plans. After that, we can try to find Amelie again. Together, you and Étienne gather up your loot, weapons, and documents, preparing to depart the scene. Étienne glances at you, a brief smile crossing his face. You know, even if we don't find Amelie right away, I'm still glad we have each other. We make a good team, Chris, and I'm sorry for jumping down your throat earlier. Let's just keep focusing on what's important, all right? You nod back, unsure if he's focused on the mission or Amelie. The two of you head out of the clearing, carefully avoiding any remaining signs of the skirmish. Once you're certain you're not being followed, you make your way to the nearest resistance safe house, hoping that the information you've found will make a difference in the fight against the Lamac Confederation. As you finally reach the resistance safe house, Étienne hands over the documents to a grateful Mariette. She pores over the information, nodding along intently as she reads. These are indeed invaluable, she says, looking up at you and Étienne. Thank you for bringing this back to us. It'll go a long way in preparing us for what's to come. You say, so we gon' find this man's sister and save her so I can get my wish granted yet, or what? Mariette sighs, looking downcast. I wish I could promise you that, Chris, but with the information we have, it's not certain where she's being held. Finding her may take some time. She looks at you, her expression apologetic. But know that you have my word that we won't stop looking until she's safe. Étienne nods in agreement, and if we do find her, Chris, I hope you'll help us get her back. She's all I have left after all. His expression softens, and there's a pleading quality to his voice that's hard to ignore. You say, of course I'll fucking help you get her back. How in the fuck else am I supposed to get the wish this fucking broad promised me? But let me make one thing clear right now, boy. I don't give two fucks about this project of hers, nor about this goddamn resistance bullshit. I want the wish this genie bitch promised me for it, and nothing else. Étienne's expression hardens, and he takes a step closer to you. Étienne's sister's project is important to us, Chris. It could change the world for the better. And the resistance isn't just about that. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. Now, I understand that you might not feel the same way, but I hope you can at least try to understand where we're coming from. Mariette puts a hand on each of their shoulders. I appreciate your enthusiasm, Chris, but let's not forget that we're all in this together. If you help us find Étienne's sister, I'm sure we can work something out that satisfies everyone involved. In the meantime, we should get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be another long day. You say, no, fuck that, Mariette. You promised me a goddamn wish that you'd grant. That is the only thing that will satisfy me. Now, can you fucking deliver that to me? Or am I wasting my fucking time here? Mariette fixes you with a stern look. I understand your frustration, Chris, but I gave you my word, and I intend to keep it. However, I can't just grant you a wish out of the blue. You have to earn it, and proving yourself as an asset to the resistance is the first step. Étienne looks conflicted, but finally nods in agreement. I appreciate your loyalty, Chris, but if we're to work together, it's best if we do so as allies and not as adversaries. I'm sure that if you help us find my sister, Mariette will see to it that your wish is granted. Eventually, you find yourself sitting down in the corner of the room, watching as other members of the resistance come and go. You're not sure how much trust you can put in either of them, but the alternative is abandoning Étienne's sister to her fate. And for now, that just won't sit right with you. Time passes, and eventually you drift off to sleep, dreaming fitfully of the dangerous mission ahead. In the distance, you can hear Mariette arguing with someone on the radio. She's relaying the information you gave her, and it seems that her words are being taken seriously. It's the first sign that perhaps you're starting to earn your place in this desperate struggle for survival. When you awaken, the first light of dawn is just beginning to filter through the cracks in the shantytown's makeshift walls. Mariette is already up and about, busily organizing the day's activities. She spots you and nods in acknowledgement before turning back to her tasks. Étienne, however, is nowhere to be seen. You exchange a glance with Mariette, who gives you a knowing smile. Don't worry about him, she whispers. He's on a mission that he had to take on alone. He won't be back for a while, but I am confident he will make it back. You say, oh, I ain't worried about him. Truth be told, the man's been a pain in my ass for a while now. All I'm worried about is getting you to grant a wish for me like you done promised. Your wish, Mariette responds calmly, will be granted when we are victorious, when New Iberia is free from the Lama Confederation's tyranny, not a moment sooner. She pauses, studying you closely. If you prove yourself useful to us, however, I may be able to expedite the process. You say, now hold the fuck up. You said it was when I rescued that pussy Étienne's sister, and now you're saying it's when your war is over. What kind of backhanded, double-dealing, two-faced nigger shit is that? Mariette gives you a sad smile. I understand your frustration, Chris, but the fate of New Iberia is not just about one person. It's about all of us, working together to overcome the challenges that face us. If you truly want to help us and earn your wish in the process, then you need to put aside your personal feelings and focus on the greater good. You say, fuck your greater good. I done been real open since I met you that I don't give two goddamn shits about your cause. I've been doing all this for that fucking wish you promised, and that's it. Now you're telling me that your original agreement of when I get my wish is pushed back by basically 1,000-fold? That's fucking bullshit, Mariette. And you know it. Mariette's expression hardens, and for a moment, you're not sure if she's angered or hurt. I understand that you are feeling frustrated, Chris, but if you truly want what is best for yourself and for those you care about, then you will need to trust in the greater cause. The fate of New Iberia is not something that can be won through selfish actions and petty demands. She pauses, taking a deep breath before continuing. Look, I can see that you're not going to change your mind. So let me make you a deal. You help us rescue Étienne's sister from the Lama Confederation, and I will grant you your wish immediately. But if you back out or cause any problems along the way, I cannot guarantee your safety or the safety of those you care about. You say, okay, so we're back at the original deal then? I get old boy's sister back and I get my wish? Mariette's expression softens slightly, and she nods. Yes, Chris, that is the deal. If you help us rescue Étienne's sister and ensure her safety, then I will grant you your wish. But remember, this is not just about one person. We are fighting for the freedom of an entire city. Our actions have consequences. With that, she turns her attention back to organizing the Resistance's forces. You agree to save Étienne's sister only for the promised wish, nothing else. You and Mariette exchange knowing glances. She hands you a map and some basic supplies, then whispers, "Thank you, Chris. I won't forget this." You nod, accepting the map and supplies. Together, you formulate a plan to rescue Étienne's sister from the clutches of the Lama Confederation. Without further ado, you set out alone, using the map provided by Mariette to navigate through the treacherous swamps and forests of Bayou country. Your heart pounds in your chest, both from fear and determination, as you push forward, driven by the desire for your wish. As you trek through the wilderness, you eventually come across a Lamat Confederation outpost. With cautious steps, you sneak closer, using the cover of bushes and trees to remain unseen. The outpost appears to be guarded heavily, with Confederate soldiers patrolling the area. You crouch low, aiming your rifle with deadly precision. One after another, you take out the Confederate soldiers guarding the outpost, dropping them silently with well-placed shots. As the last soldier falls, the sudden silence is broken by the sound of alarms. The prisoner camp is located nearby, but it's now under heavy guard. You quickly scour the outpost, finding an abundance of weapons and ammunition. You loot several rifles, pistols, and knives from the bodies of the Confederate soldiers, as well as a small stash of grenades. You stuff as much ammunition as you can carry into your pockets, and even manage to find a few healing items for your own use. With your new arsenal at hand, you head towards the prisoner camp, feeling more confident in your chances of success. The camp is well fortified, with barbed wire fences and guard towers surrounding the area. A small group of Confederate soldiers is already gathered near the entrance, prepared to defend the camp at all costs. With a battle cry, you charge forward, weapons blazing. Your newfound weapons feel solid in your hands as you lay waste to the Confederate soldiers guarding the entrance. The remaining enemy soldiers scatter, confused by your sudden onslaught. You push deeper into the camp, leaving a trail of bodies in your wake. Eventually, you find yourself at the cell where Étienne's sister is being held. She looks up at you with tear-filled eyes, clearly relieved to see you. "Chris, thank you for coming," she whispers. You nod, grimly determining that you'll get her out of here one way or another. Before you can free her, however, alarms sound once more as more Confederate soldiers arrive on the scene. You and Étienne's sister are forced to take cover behind a makeshift shelter as the enemy soldiers open fire. You duck down low, using the shelter as cover as you return fire at the Confederate soldiers. Bullets whiz past your head, slamming into the wooden planks and dirt around you, but you manage to keep your head down and keep fighting. After a tense exchange of gunfire, you manage to take out most of the enemy soldiers, allowing you to regroup and formulate a plan for extracting Étienne's sister from the camp. You pull the pins on 3 grenades and hurl them together at the closest group of Confederate soldiers. The grenades detonate in a burst of fire and shrapnel, decimating the enemy forces and creating a smokescreen that obscures your view for several precious moments. You use this opportunity to extract yourself and Étienne's sister from the camp. The swamp outside the back of the camp is eerily quiet, and you can't see any signs of pursuit. Cautiously, you and Étienne's sister make your way through the dark, marshy water. After several minutes of careful navigation, you manage to lose your pursuers in the tangled network of water and vegetation. You say, "It's a long road ahead of us to get you back safely, so do what I say, and don't argue with me when I say it. Got it? Also, what was your name again?"